One speaker I got a chance to talk to. You may have heard of him. He's making his rise in fame, rightfully so, because he is probably one of the smartest people I have ever talked to. He has a PhD in mathematics, but has since dedicated his life to exposing Marxism and how it seeps its way into our institutions. I talked to him about where he came from, how he got his start in this, and then also what are the consequences and where are we going? How can we fight against it? I'm going to cut it up a little bit and talk to you guys in segments about exactly what this guy is saying, because he's fast paced and he's quick and he's smart as heck. So here is my conversations with the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. James Lindsay. Again, incredibly smart guy. Here's my conversation with him. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9 and beyond. I'm your host, Phares, and today I am with Dr. James Lindsay, the leading expert in honestly what is going on in our country with wokeism and Marxism and how it's putting itself into every area of our civilization. James, let us know, where did you come from?
Kind of all over the place. I mean, I grew up in academia, so to speak. I got a PhD in mathematics in 2010. I left academia right away. Turns out, I don't know if you know, there are people that are wrong on the internet, so I started to argue with them, and I discovered what was going on in gender studies and critical race theory and queer theory maybe as early as 2011 or 12, and I started to look into it. So by 2015, 16, I was getting very serious about that, and I thought, they won't let me criticize this. They say I'm not qualified, I don't have a doctorate in it, it's in math, it doesn't count. So I started to study for real, and we said, let's write a bunch of fake academic articles and publish them in research level journals, academic journals. So me and two colleagues, Pete Bogosian and Helen Pluckrose, wrote 20 academic articles, got a whole bunch of them, 7 of them accepted for publication. The Wall Street Journal caught us in the middle, so we didn't get to see how many we could really get. And in the process, I learned that I think that the end of Western civilization lays at the end of the road. They said, I said we had a paper, we said we should abuse kids out of their privilege, but we should do it compassionately. And they said, well, we like this idea, but you can't use compassion. And I was like, this is bad. If the privileged class can have no compassion directed toward it, that ends in a bad place. So I asked my wife if I could quit my job and dedicate my whole life to studying this problem and exposing it. And that was 2018. I've been doing it ever since.
Absolutely. And I just want to real quick, because some of the articles that you wrote seemed so absurd when I first heard them. Can you just lay out just a few of you said the one about compassion and abusing children for their privilege. What were some of the other topics you covered?
Well, we covered the idea that there's a rape culture in society and that we can analyze what to do about rape culture by analyzing the way that dogs hump each other at dog parks in the city, and that we can combat rape culture by taking on canine rape culture as a metaphor. And then if we train men the way that we train dogs, we can overcome rape culture. That was one. That was picked up by a leading journal in what's called feminist geography. It was given an award for excellence in scholarship. We wrote one that said the sport of bodybuilding should include fat people under a category called fat bodybuilding, where they show off their fat instead of their muscles. That was a well-received paper. There are some that are not PG, so that we won't talk about those. One was a rewrite of chapter 12 of Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, and we wrote it as intersectional feminism instead of the Nazi party movement, and that was accepted by a feminist social work journal. And so it was pretty wide-ranging in scope and pretty revelatory as to how corrupted the peer review system is, and what it will validate as what they call knowledge. And so they're pretty wild. It's difficult to do justice to how crazy they are. People who are interested, there's a documentary that just came out about it like a month ago called The Reformers. I'm in it, obviously. You can go watch that, look it up, The Reformers. It was by a man named Mike Nana. You can check that out.
That's amazing. And so moving on from that, this guy, right, literally wrote journals that were practically parody that got accepted. He rewrote Mein Kampf, a chapter of it, as if it was feminist. And it got accepted and praised. Excuse me. Can you believe this? This shows you how corrupt academia is and how in love with itself it is. Literally wrote one that was about how we should abuse the privileged class's children. Young white children, basically, young white or whatever is considered to be the privileged class. Young white, young wealthy, young straight. Abuse them, but he said do it with compassion so that they lose their privilege. And they said no compassion. no compassion. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? That is what, and so I laugh in there, but it's terrifying. That is what academia accepts. And so to bring this back to the very beginning, this is what college conservatives are dealing with. A lot of people that push crap like that. And just for context, too, the way that you know this guy is the real deal, James Lindsay, on his Wikipedia page, which obviously is not necessarily any type of valid source, but for this it is, it says Dr. James Stephen Lindsay, known professionally as James A. Lindsay, is an American author, cultural critic, mathematician, and conspiracy theorist. Well, if we've learned anything in recent history, it's that anything that's labeled a conspiracy theory is really just the truth 9 months before it's exposed as the truth. So Dr. James Lindsay is a truth teller. He's a truth teller. And now I get to talking with him a little bit about so we started with academia, but I move on and want to talk with him about how wokeism and woke Marxism has worked its way into business. And so here's me talking to him about that. A little bit, because obviously we know that our academic institutions have been incredibly woke for quite a while, and you proved that with your almost parody and stand-up comedy-esque academic journals. Business, what used to be known as a place where people would seek profit and to help a consumer find a need, is now inserting itself into the social political atmosphere with things such as Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light pushing the trans agenda, the LGBTQ and pride agenda into some of most America's most beloved brands. And now, I mean, Americans aren't having it. They're going back. And so it has to do with Marxism, you say, and with the insertion. So exactly, can you lay out how that is?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a mechanism that it's all being run through called ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance scoring of corporations. And they have all these proxy measures, like what's called a corporate equality index. The Human Rights Campaign does a corporate equality index. The corporate equality index measures how promotional you are for LGBT stuff. Well, that goes into your social score and your governance score for your ESG score. And that determines how much access you have to like short-term capital, lines of credit, listings, and Scott indices, and all of these different stuff, stock indices. And so there's a lot of levers of control. If you want to have a corporation that works at scale, at business, big scale, you've got to be completely compliant to this. You've got to buy into it. And so they're manipulating our corporations using that score. But what it is it's the fruit of the long march through the institutions, which is the Marxist program. You take over education, in the next generation, you have all the professionals. The professionals go into HR departments, corporate executive boards, the banks, et cetera. They start remaking those in terms of their ideology, and then it's captured from within. And that's what's happened, and that's how it actually works.
That's insane. And so you say they, and so I'm willing to bet that your average naked man on the streets of New York during the Pride Parade is not the overall Marxist that's pushing all this. So who is they that wants this agenda, and why do they want it?
Well, I mean, the two biggest overt organizations pushing this stuff as far as kind of nonprofit sort of things are the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. A lot of people don't know ESG was created as a strategy for using people's pension money to do activism investing, impact investing they call it, at the United Nations in 2003 by a man named James Gifford. It was a UN creation in the first place. The World Economic Forum pushes it harder than anybody. The other theys that are pulling around the corporations work in tandem with them. We take, for example, Larry Fink, the executive chairman of BlackRock, which is the largest investment firm in the world. It's been described in the media as the fourth branch of American government.
The fourth branch of American government, right? So I have more, I get into a little bit more about why these people want this. But as he stated, it's these big organizations that we've talked about on this show before, the World Economic Forum, BlackRock, Vanguard, other players. It's everything we kind of know, but here's the thing, and I think this is the most important thing, is how it slithers through our institutions. Sorry, I can't get every word right all the time. Slithers through our institutions. It starts in education. Why does it start in education? Because you need to indoctrinate the entire generation to then believe this for the future. And then once they get out all the way through their education and now they're in the workforce, well, then they take everything that they just learned, all the woke crap, into the workforce, and it gets implemented there. And then into the government. And then ultimately the world. That is their plan. Now, why exactly do they want to do this, and how are they doing this even more? Well,
Or
Dr.
the entire
Lindsay and I
world.
continue with this. Dr. Lindsay and I talk about this, and he starts off with to take over the entire world.
The entire world. How do you get power over the entire world? They look at Xi Jinping with power over all of China and then everything in its Belt and Road Initiative, and they say, we want that. We want that power back. We used to have that power when it was European empires. We want that power back. How do we get it? Well, we got to start controlling American freedom. Well, where is the biggest reservoir of freedom that we can tap into? We can't lock them up arbitrarily. We can't kill them arbitrarily. We don't have that kind of state, but we can start manipulating their property rights. We can say, yeah, you can have your property, but we're going to limit what you can do with it and how you can use it. And so they start taking away your property rights, and they did that through the corporations, through these huge financial levers like we talked about.
It's absolutely insane. And so if we do not stand up, if we do not say something about what's going on, what will our consequences be?
I think that, George Orwell said, if you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. But if you want a more kind of high resolution image of what that looks like, I encourage you to look at what's happening in China, because the goal is to remake the West to look like an ESG mirror image of China. This is a model we all know about. Mao Zedong, the communist dictator that took over China. Nobody knows about his successor, whose name was Deng Xiaoping. And Deng Xiaoping retooled the CCP to have the open market that it has today.
Basically, they want to make it so that the entire world just looks like China. Why exactly do they want this? Well, he touched on that a little bit. They want their power back, essentially. And this, I'm paraphrasing here. America is a threat to unitary power. At one point, America was owned by the British. We all know. Then 1776 comes around, and the greatest political documents were ever written in the next few decades. One, the Declaration of Independence, 1776. And we have the Constitution, which was 1788, June 21st, 1788. And so we have those greatest political documents ever written, and it is the goal of these zealots, these neo-Marxist, progressive leftist zealots, again, not your average gay guy that's naked on the street at a pride parade. These tippy-top 1%. This is why I'm a populist, everybody. This is why I'm going to sound a little bit like Bernie Sanders here for a second. The tippy-top 1%ers that are participating in the World Economic Forum and are a part of these secret societies and everything that we know about. Again, this isn't a conspiracy theory. They go out and say it. They literally say at the World Economic Forum that they have a plan for a new world order. That new world order, make everyone China. And that's exactly what James says. But, again, sounds hopeless, right? Sounds hopeless. But I asked James specifically, what can we do? What can we do to make sure that does not happen? And so let's take a look, everybody.
Putting it out there. So what can people like you do? Start researching, start talking about it, start getting together with friends, stop apologizing, stop trying to be politically correct. Say the truth. Don't just go be an edgy person to be edgy. It's not about that. That's leftist stuff. It's about, no, we're going to be real. We're going to talk about what's really happening. We're going to find out what's really happening. We're going to tell the truth, and we're going to start organizing with each other. There's 6,000 people come to this.
Yeah.
This event we're at. 6,000 people are here. That's a lot. Well, it was like 4,000 last year. Mm-hmm. What does that tell you? We have growth. So what do? We're doing it. Don't give up. Keep doing more of it. That's what we do.
The silent majority will not be silent any longer. Thank you so much, Dr. James Lindsay, for your education. It's absolute genius right here, everybody. Go look him up. What's your social media so everybody can make sure that they follow you?
Yeah, website is New Discourse.
So it's newdiscourses.com. I did get cut off a little bit there by my cameraman at the end. But thank you, Grant, by the way, for being a great cameraman. I really do appreciate it. But newdiscourses.com. And again, the silent majority cannot be silent. Why am I here? Why am I doing this show? Because the silent majority cannot be silent. Period. The silent majority cannot be silent. If we are the majority, as we claim to be within the idea of being a silent majority, then why are we silent? When all this stuff is happening, and again, we are doing a pretty good job. We are sending Bud Light to the grave, $30+ billion down. Other companies have also started to see it. A big one being Target. I don't want to move on to my next segment real quick. I want to say thank you again to Dr. James Lindsay. I'm going to try to get him on again. He's just an incredibly intelligent guy. Go check out New Discourses. Go check out some of his books. Cynical Theories, written in 2020. Race Marxism, 2022. So many more. That he's just an incredibly intelligent guy. I'm sure you could find some of those essays he talked about as well. Just so smart. Go check that stuff out. He really is an absolute genius.